It's not easy to be a prophet. A priest, yes. A priest can live comfortably for most of his life in the parish, and that can be easy at times. But a prophet is different. Oftentimes we notice in scriptures, it seems like all these prophets need like anger management classes or therapy or something, because they're constantly pessimistic. Everybody can be joyous and optimistic or whatever, and here comes Debbie Downer to kind of break the day. They seem to be yelling at them. They seem to be judging them. They're saying the words that obviously they don't want to say, but they say them because they believe that God is inspiring them to do this. And so they remind us of, in mythology, Sisyphus, who was punished by rolling the boulder up the hill, and he'd get almost to the top of the hill and then roll back down again, and he had to do it again. That was the life of a prophet, that they would speak all the things that people didn't want to hear, and then they move on to the next town and do the same thing. Which is why we can see Elijah today is ready to call it quits. He says, "Just take me, Lord." In my early years, when I was younger, we had wonderful priests in our parish, great Redemptorist priests. In fact, they really fueled my vocation. And yet, in all those years of my young life, I can't remember a single homily that I heard there at Mass. I certainly can't remember any controversial ones, and except for one, and that was done by a missionary who came in to speak about abortion, and it was breathtaking. And the fact that they didn't preach on controversial issues could have been because it was the 70s and 80s and everything was okay. I'm okay, you're okay, let's preach about love and kindness and mercy. Or that there weren't any controversial issues. Well, we know well that there were controversial issues. But it might have been the attitude of the preachers at the time, let's just preach what the people want to hear instead of sometimes what they need to hear. High school was much the same. I don't remember any controversial homilies in high school. And that could have been me, because I was a high school kid. But you know as well as I do, high school kids have a great sense of justice. And they want everybody to be treated the same. And so if a priest did say something that was controversial, my ears would have perked up and I would have remembered. But we didn't hear that. And in college, it was much the same. And so it's not easy to be a prophet, because the prophet has to speak the truth, even when the prophet themselves struggles with the truth. Even when they want to say other things, that they always have to speak that. And it's what people don't want to hear. And we don't want to hear it because we're comfortable, or we don't want to hear it because it makes us look at ourselves and say, am I doing something wrong, or I'm not perfect? Or that we've adopted so many ways over time that have become a real part of who we are. And to remove those will be painful, to say the least. It's like those people who go down in the coal mine and they get trapped down there. And after 30 or 40 days, when they're finally rescued, they have to wear eye protection when they come out, because their eyes are so sensitive to the light that it will burn and that it will cause pain. And the same is true for us. Sometimes it's easier to dwell in the mines and not come out. And for the one who preaches, it's difficult to preach the truth, because it will definitely lead to persecution. And usually, always, it will lead to death in one way or another. It's interesting to me, when a priest is assigned to a parish, they use a gauge to kind of see how successful they're being. And when they gauge the priest, usually they'll look at this. Are the collections still coming in? Is the place still running? Are the people basically happy with who's there? And is the priest happy with the people there? Are all their needs being met, their spiritual needs, etc., etc.? It really affects the bottom line. Are they building anything? All these things gauge the success of a priest. And there's one question that often is not asked at all. And I think it's the most important question. Are they preaching the truth in charity? Because like I said, it can be very easy to get comfortable in a parish and you're not preaching the truth. You're just being comfortable. And so I think the most important question is, are we preaching the truth? Sometimes it can be much easier to be a CEO of the plant and make sure everything works right. than it can be to be a spiritual father and certainly a pastor. And so I would say to you, first of all, there's no room in our church for bigotry. There's no room in our church for hatred. And I say this in talking about the truth because even though there's no room in our church for bigotry, when we preach the truth, at times people will call us bigots. And if we preach what we know to be true and honest and good, that we will be called haters, or we will say that we discriminate. There's a plethora of other names that they can use to refer to us because we're preaching the truth. And the ones who will most often label us with these things are those who are part of a religion called secular humanism. I don't even know if secular humanism really is a religion, but the fact is, these are those who believe there is no universal law. There is no divine law. There is no objective truth. So you can do whatever you want as long as you allow me to do whatever I want. If you don't allow me to do whatever I want, then you're intolerant, and you're a bigot, and you're a hater. And this is what we're fighting against in this day and age, this secular humanism. And the job of the prophet, despite all that, is to speak the truth with charity. And that's why most of the prophets we read about in sacred scripture are a miserable lot, because they're not liked. Can you imagine going everywhere and being hated? That people are constantly speaking badly about you and calling you all sorts of names. And then when you're finally done there and you can go, you're sent to the next place. That could be even worse. You're sent to the Ninevites, or you're sent to Babylon, or Tyre and Sidon. And so this fight has been going on for some time. So here's Elijah. Elijah is ready to die. He's had it. He's like, enough is enough. And he's laying there, he's ready to die. And we think, oh God, in your mercy, please let him go to his eternal reward. He's done a good job. But God does not. He gives him food and water so he can do more work. Because there is no eternal reward without persecution. There's no resurrection without a passion. That's what it means to be a prophet. And so as a pastor here, I have a choice. I'll probably be here for about 5 more years. Usually the term of a pastor is 6 years. And they could be easy years. Now don't get me wrong, you do get the people who call in or complain every now and then over policy or parking lot or whatever else. You can handle those. But I could preach mercy and justice, the love of God, the love of our neighbor. I could preach all those things and stay away from the hot buttons and the controversy and have an easy 5 years. A nice career, I could wind it up at the end, go to the next place and do the same thing. That's not a prophet. We have to be either a priest or we have to be a priest that's a prophet. And I think what happens at times, we get so engulfed with the things around us, that things that we must have thought were immoral in the past, or we thought they're, aberrations of the norm, and now they've become pretty much the underpinnings of what we believe. That this secular humanism surrounds us so much, and we know people who subscribe to this religion, and they're good people. And they're our neighbors, and they're our friends, and our relatives, and we see the goodness in them when we say, well, it can't be bad because they're doing it. Can you imagine in the first centuries of the church, the complaints the apostles must have had from the new Christians? Why can't we go to the gladiatorial games? I mean, we've been going there for forever. Well, because your fellow Christians are being murdered there. Because gladiators are killing each other. You can't do that. Well, why can't we go to the Bacchan wine festival? Why can't we do that? Our friends do it. They're pagans. They've been doing it for years. We party, we have a good time. You can't do that. Even though those people don't even believe in that God anymore, they still party. It's all kinds of debauchery and everything else there. You can't do that. Why can't we marry like the pagans do? Several times, or different people. Why can't we do these things that the pagans do? Because you're not pagan. You're Christian. We follow the teachings of Christ. And Rome was so full of that secular humanism that eventually the Roman culture would disintegrate and the Roman Empire crumble because of much of that it invaded that. And so there's a force that we need to fight in our world, much as these prophets gave their life for it, and that is secular humanism. That is the religion, if you can call it that. It makes us the center, so it's anthropocentric or egocentric. We become God. And so we decide what is the order or disorder, whatever the case may be. And their mantra is, do whatever you want, as long as you treat everyone equally. And treat everyone equally as long as they are tolerant of what we want. If they are not tolerant of what we want, then we persecute them. And we label them. And we try to take the foundation from beneath them. And this is the secular humanism that has now become the most followed religion in the world. And we are attacked constantly by this. Only a few months ago at our parish mission, it was the third night I came to bring the sword, and I spoke about some companies that came forward in support of same-gender marriage. That's the last time I'm going to say that, so you don't have to explain it on your way home, okay? They came out in support of it. Instead of clandestinely supporting it or quietly sending their money there, they came out and said, despite you other customers, we are supporting this law to allow for this marriage. Now, where was the public outcry from that? Well, there wasn't any. Where were those who were picketing or protesting? There wasn't any. And I remember saying on that night, and you can watch it on YouTube, there's my little plug, you can watch it on YouTube. I remember saying, what if someone came out and said, I support marriage only between one man and one woman? That there would be such an outcry and backlash from this secular humanist community that it would be immediate and vitriolic. And I guess only 2 weeks ago we experienced that. We really did. We experienced the vitriol and really the labeling and the cursing and the persecution from the community of secular humanists. Notice I didn't say from the gay community, because that's not true. Many of those individuals came forward and said, no, I defend the right of free speech. And they're doing okay. Why should I persecute them? They're doing the same thing that we did. And actually the support from the non-secular humanistic community was surprising to me in a positive way in many restraints. So I want to make sure that you understand me, because people will read the bulletin this week where there's an article about that. And they will hear what I say, and it's not always what I say, but it's what they hear that they take with them. So I want to be very clear here. This is not about those individuals who are living an alternative lifestyle. Because of all the hundreds of them who have come to me for counseling or ministry or confession, the emotion that reigns supreme in most of them is not hatred. It's not even a disbelief in the church. It's not that they think they're being discriminated against or they're angry. The greatest emotion is fear. It's not fear that they're going to get fired or arrested or persecuted. It's fear that they're going to disappoint their parents or their grandparents. It's fear that their friends are going to treat them differently because of this, and that their church might kick them out, that there's no place for them here. I want to restate what I said before. There is no room for bigotry or hatred in the church. If we are hateful or we are bigots, then we are contradicting the gospel that we are charged to proclaim. And we cannot do that. And so we welcome those who are struggling with this. And we love them and support them. And you might say, well, Father, how can we support that? You're contradicting yourself. No, I'm not. People will come to me after being unfaithful. And I don't say, get out of here. There's no room for you here. There's no place in the church for you. You're a sinner. Get out of here. No, we welcome them and we love them. But we tell them what they did is wrong. And if they continue with that lifestyle, the lifestyle you're living is wrong. And people will blame genetics. There's a fallacy called genetic determinism, which says everything we do is determined by genes. That doesn't make any sense. Partially, absolutely. Genetics does play a role in it. But there are people who could come to me and say, oh, anger runs in my family, or violence runs in my family, or abuse runs in my family. Well, that doesn't mean you can do it. Just because it runs in the family, we're not going to allow that. People will come and say it's cultural. I went to one place, and it was an older community, and it was culturally acceptable to hit their wife. They said, Father, that's not a sin, it's cultural. I don't care whether it's cultural or not, it's wrong. You know, there's some things we could say it's cultural, it doesn't make it right. And the same thing is true here. Anybody who is sinful, and that's all of us, we should be welcomed and loved. Truth with charity. Truth with charity. You can't have one without the other. And so these individuals who struggle with this, we welcome them and we love them. But we can't say it's right. We can't do it. And that is the influence of this culture that says, no, it's okay, it's right. It's actually kidnapped, it's hijacked those people and made them a part of this movement, which is secular humanism. And so I want to make sure that everyone understands this is not an issue about people who are struggling with an alternative lifestyle. It's about taking a sacred institution that Jesus validated and Jesus instituted and kidnapping that, plagiarizing that sacrament and saying, let's apply it to everybody. And you know what? To pardon my expression, it's cliche, paybacks are hell. And in the first centuries of the church, we took the pagan feast days and some of the pagan rituals and we made them Catholic. And so now they're doing the same with us. This secular humanist pagan culture is taking our sacraments and plagiarizing them. It is removing the power from them, making them their own, so that they don't have any power. That is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a culture that is going to take our sacraments, take the things we hold sacred, and generalize them or apply them. And we can't support that. So those individuals who will come out publicly and say they support things which to our faith are unacceptable at the very best, we cannot support them. They've come out publicly and said it. We don't care what you believe, this is what we believe. And it doesn't make good business sense. But if they've done that, we cannot support them. And I would say that for this church, that we cannot financially support them. That we have to withdraw any help or any funding or any purchasing that we might have done for these individuals and take it back, because what they are doing, they're taking that money and putting it toward breaking down the foundation of our church. It doesn't make any sense to give to that. You know, on Trinity Sunday, I spoke about being Catholic. And what does it mean? If we go to church on Sunday and then we go out and we live our life however we want to, is that really being Catholic? In the book of Revelation, it says, the beast should even speak, and to cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also it causes all, both great and rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or its number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let him who has understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. 666 is not the mark of the devil. The beast was Nero and Rome. The Greeks, much like the Romans, didn't have Arabic numerals. They used letters, X, V, I. And so the name Caesar Nero equals 666. And the culture that has enslaved these people is the secular humanism of the day. They're marked on their forehead because that's where slaves were marked. So we become slaves to the attitude of secular humanism. They become marked on the hand because they exchange money. They support those who support this religion of secular humanism. And so we cannot be one who does that. We cannot support those who support things that are directly contradictory to what we believe to be true. So we must stand up and we must be strong. We must be a prophetic voice because we're called to be saints. So we should not be surprised when we're called any number of different names from that culture that seeks not simply to deny God, but seeks to destroy God. Jesus says, if the world hates you, it hated me first. He goes on to say, blessed are you when they persecute you and they utter every kind of slander against you falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. As I look ahead, I could have an easy 5 years here. And I could preach the love and mercy and forgiveness of God, feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, help the poor. But at the end of my 5 years, the Lord, as he inevitably always does, will say to me, what did you do for me at that church? And I will say, well, I preached forgiveness and love and mercy and all those things that the people wanted to hear. That's what I did for you. And he will reply, you did that for yourself. I came to bring a fire and wood that you